Where there's thunder, there's lightning. John Nada. Well, I've been off from work for a few days on vacation, had some family in, and so I find myself with some time again to make another video. And so here's some of the things that I have encountered and some of the thoughts that I've had over the past few weeks, few months, during my silence, during my absence from the program. I happened upon an article today, and I don't know how many of you all have witnessed this phenomenon, but I don't know how many of you guys are still trying to do the online dating thing, or if most of you have pretty well figured out that the juice is not worth the squeeze. But I assume that there's still some guys out there that are probably still taking a crack at the whole thing. And in my time, in my past experience with those things, I've come to find a lot of truths out about them. You know, there at one time was Plenty of Fish that was a pretty free site, and you didn't really have to pay for anything. And there was pretty well free flow of communication back and forth. And in the past, I had had success on that in terms of occasionally meeting a girl, going on a few dates here and there, and maybe something more happening down the road. Well, now Plenty of Fish is pretty much a paid site at this point, I guess. It changed and evolved over time. I believe Match.com bought it and OkCupid out. So obviously their intent was to make money off this thing that had at one time been free. And not only that, there was an influx of bots and scammers and things like that were on there. And then you've got the other dating apps, which I may have mentioned in a previous program. I don't remember those, so I'll go ahead and mention them again. But there is the Bumble app, which is basically like Tinder, with the major exception being that the women have to make the first interaction and reach out first. Well, this is, of course, is already doomed to not work for most guys, because most women are not going to go out of their way to make the first interaction and do the first communicating. And if they do, chances are it's probably not going to go anywhere. The ones that may reach out to you would be the same ones that would reach out to you on Plenty of Fish or Tinder. And these would be women that, I mean, suffice it to say, nobody is messaging due to them not being very attractive. And in addition to Bumble, of course, there's Tinder, which I never used. And I'm told that a lot of people early on had success with that app, but I think that it pretty quickly just became a validation tool for a lot of women and a way to pass the time. And so that begs the question of, are the paid services any better? Now, I had a friend several years ago who was on eHarmony.com, and he did end up getting married, but it was not as a result of anything that happened off of eHarmony. I did Match.com several years ago and had less success on it than I did on Plenty of Fish back when it was more or less a free site. I met one girl off there, and it didn't end up going anywhere. Now you say, why bring all that up? Well, I brought all that up to put into context something here that I had read earlier that I thought was an interesting phenomenon that I'd kind of noticed, but I did not know if anybody else had noticed it. Now several years ago, I started to notice that a lot of so-called trans women were popping up on these dating apps, and it was usually pretty obvious. But it was something that prior to had not really been seen or heard of. And so in this article, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically the gist of the article is that there are straight men who were going on Grindr, I guess, and specifically looking for so-called trans women, or specifically looking to meet so-called trans women. And so in the article, it says that the person left Tinder earlier in the month after averaging 2 matches a week and meeting only 4 people in 6 months. It said that he was a caretaker to a relative dealing with dementia, and by his own accounts, that he was a pretty lonely guy. Also, his father had recently passed away, and 6 weeks after that, his girlfriend dumped him. So much for the supportive girlfriend. It says that he knew about Grindr being a gay site, so he later had learned also that it included a trans category. He went ahead and downloaded the app. Now, not surprisingly, he got over 100 messages in the first week, but the majority of those were from guys, and there were several from some trans women, so-called. But basically, what that says to me is that the dating scene and the relationships between men and women have gotten to be so bad and so toxic that you have straight men, at least self-described, going on Grindr, and straight men ostensibly on these other sites where there's also profiles of so-called trans women on there. And they are willing, I guess, because they're so lonely and because they're so starved for female attention, female validation, they will, I guess, in a sense, fool themselves into thinking that that's exactly what they're getting from this other group. Now, to me, it would be like trying to get drunk off a near beer. I mean, it's not in the same category, not the same thing. But yet, here, apparently it's a phenomenon because more and more of these profiles are popping up. And then, like I said, this article which talked about this guy actually going on Grindr, I guess, to speak with so-called trans women or try to get dates with them. And so that's where we're at, I guess. So starved for physical and emotional validation are a lot of guys out there that they're willing to go that direction or go that route. I mean, what can you say about it? I think it's an interesting phenomenon, but it says a lot about the state of things. Now, another thing that I got to thinking about in context with this, there is a new app, I guess. Well, it's not an app, but I'd seen they have come out with a new program called Virtual Mate. Now, I don't know how many people are familiar with this, and I'm not 100% sure what it is or what it does, but basically it seems like a simulated girlfriend experience through virtual reality. And I guess there's some kind of appendage that you buy that allows you to physically interact with the virtual girlfriend. Now, I don't know, how realistic it is or if it lives up to the claims, but it made me start to think about the whole thing that came out a couple of years ago, and that was the whole sex doll revolution, if you will. Now, several years ago, it would have been just an odd thing for somebody to even be talking about this. But now there is such a market for this, and a lot of MGTOW have gone this route. Those of us that are not MGTOW monk, or those of us that aren't still kind of 1 foot in the game and 1 foot out with women, there is a segment that have gone the doll route. Now, again, I believe I've brought this up in another video, but I was thinking about how the doll will never really love you, but the doll won't pretend to love you either. And, maybe one is better than the other. Perhaps it's better to know that at the end of the day, the doll is a doll. It's there to fulfill its physical and aesthetic purpose. And maybe that's actually better than to be with somebody who says they love you who acts like they love you, but who all the while is pretending to love you. Because we all know from our studies and from our own experiences that the likelihood that any of us are going to meet a woman that really and truly legitimately loves us the way that men love women is pretty infinitesimal, if at all. If there's even a statistic there that's infinitesimal. But what that tells me is that there are still a lot of guys out there that are going through different things, be it due to the loss of a loved one, loss of a job, dealing with illness, dealing with their own illness, or dealing with the illness of somebody in their family, and anybody that's ever had a relative that has dementia or Alzheimer's or any of that. That stuff is so terrible to deal with. And, to not only deal with it with one relative, but to possibly deal with it with multiple relatives at different times. And so there appear to be a lot of guys out there that are going through a loneliness, I guess. And we've talked about it from time to time in the MGTOW community about the difference between being alone and being lonely. And I think that a lot of acceptance of that and a lot of, I guess, getting over that, so to speak, comes with time. And something that I've found that has really helped me over the years, even before becoming MGTOW, is to find something that you're really interested in. Now, we phrase it a lot as a hobby. A lot of people, MGTOW, have talked about finding hobbies, enjoying hobbies. And it could be a hobby, but find something that gives you a lot of peace and a lot of meaning. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a hobby as in toy trains or whatever. It could be writing. It could be something that's not traditionally thought of as a hobby. Pursuing interests and things like that. The key to a lot of this is to live your life and stay busy and try not to become stagnant. Now, there are times where it's important to sit down and reflect and to be still and to meditate and to think about things and to get things into perspective. And I'm not saying fill your life up with so much stuff as a distraction, but fill your life with things of meaning to you. Find things that bring you joy, happiness, and contentment, and help you continue to persevere in your growth as a person. Because the fact of the matter is, there are still a lot of men out there who will give up their peace for a peace. And when you go your own way in search of truth, the reality of it is you will primarily be on your own. There's not going to be a lot of people go with you. You'll have family that'll be against you. You'll have family that'll think that you're a misogynist because of different ideas and things that you have. You'll have friends that will abandon you for one reason or the other. Maybe they get married. Maybe they find a girlfriend. Or maybe you just diverge so much in your way of thinking to theirs that the friendship simply runs its course. And the mainstream society, of course, is not going to go along with a lot of what we have found to be true and what we believe. Now, to me, the saddest thing is for one to find the truth but ignore it. For one to find the truth, for the seed to be scattered upon the rock, but yet no root take hold, because the seed is on the rock and not in the soil where it can be nurtured, where it can grow, where it can put down a root system. To me, the saddest thing, the thing that's more sad than never knowing the truth, is to know the truth, yet walk away, not because it makes you uncomfortable, but because it makes others uncomfortable. And so this whole MGTOW thing is a journey where one is oftentimes on the road alone. But at the end of the day, it is your choice to go your own way or not.